All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to continue our work on interpreting and finding whole number quotients. Possibly some remainders are going to be in these problems, but we're just doing one-step word problems. But our knowledge of these problems is that we're going to be working with divisors of 6, 7, 8, and 9. And we know that a divisor is a number we're dividing by. It usually represents our number of groups or the size of the group, which is what we're talking about when we engage in the RDW process. We have to make a tape diagram that represents what the problem is asking us to do. So let's take a look at problem number 2. Everybody is given the same number of colored pencils in art class. I'm reading that and I'm like, cool, that's a fun fact. Everyone gets the same number. The only thing I'm pulling out of this that I see is important is the same number. I can interchange that with equal groups, right? Lets me know I'm gonna be dividing. If there are 249 colored pencils and 8 students, how many pencils does each student receive? So when we engage in this process of solving with word problems, I have to think to myself, what is it the problem is asking me to do? I see the same number of colored pencils, 249 students, colored pencils for 8 students each. So I'm like, okay, I definitely have to go ahead and do some division. But as I fill out my tape diagram, I need to ask myself, I'm gonna say CP for short. As I'm making my tape diagram, I need to ask myself, what information is this problem providing me? Is it letting me know the size of the group or the number of groups? I don't know how many colored pencils each person's getting, but I know 8 people will get them. So at this point, all I know is that there's going to be 8 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And within those groups, I need to ask myself, well, how many pencils will each student receive? So let's go ahead and engage in this division process. Now, I am going to go ahead and once again utilize the partial quotients method first. I'm going to do 8 divided by 249. Remember, when we're thinking of partial quotients, we're not thinking in groups of ones, tens, hundreds. We're kind of thinking of everything as one big chunk of ones that we can split in whichever way we see fit. So I'm looking at this and I see 249 ones divided by 8 is essentially how I'm thinking in my brain. So I think to myself, I want to take away a big chunk and start grouping them for those 8 students, right? Think of 8 different piles that each kid, and you're trying to distribute these as quickly as possible. So I'm thinking 200, 240, pull the phone. I see a multiple here. I know that I can do 8 times 3 to get 24. Which means if I do 8 times 30, then if I do 8 times 30, I'm going to get 240 of those pencils distributed out to those 8 kids. And now I just have 9 pencils left to distribute to those students. So I think to myself, well, that means each student is going to get 1 more because 1 times 8 is 8. And I have 1 remaining. So I have 31R1 here when I use my partial quotients method. So notice how I took in chunks. Okay, each of you 8 kids, here's 30, 30, 30. Oh, wow, I only have 9 pencils left. Here's 1 for each of you. That leaves me with 1 lonely pencil. Poor guy. So I'm going to check my work by reversing the problem, doing 31 times 8, then adding on my remainder, and that should get me 249. 8 times 1 is 8. Then I cross to the tens. 3 tens times 8 is 24 tens. Plus that remainder, I do indeed get 249. My answer is correct. Each student gets 31 pencils, and that extra one's just gonna have to get saved for next year, I suppose. Okay, let me do this right beside here, so maybe some of you can visually compare partial quotients with the standard. Right here, okay? So the difference between partial quotients and the standard algorithm is you're looking at it in terms of place value. You don't just chunk everything into ones right away. You work your way down the place value chart. So I begin by looking at 200s. 200s divided by 8. I cannot take 200s the way they are bundled and put them in 8 groups. So that means I end up grouping no hundreds. 0 hundreds times 8 gets me 0 hundreds, and I still have 2 hundreds left. But I don't just leave them there. I can now go ahead and unbundle them. So now I have 240 or 24 tens. 24 tens divided by 8 gets me 3 tens in each group. 3 tens times 8 means I was able to group 24 tens. When I do the work here, 24 tens minus 24 equals 0. And I move into my ones place, and I create this final step of the equation as I work down my place value chart. 9 ones divided by 8 would mean 1 1 would be in each group. 1 1 times 8 means I have grouped 8 out of 9 ones, and I have 1 1 remaining. So I got the same answer, but my process was different. It's your job as the learner now to determine which process is the best for you.